This will be your comprehensive guide to playing Boa Hancock in OPO7 and OPO8. I feel this deck is very competitive for both the OPO7 and OPO8 format. As a fan of Hancock, I've played many iterations of the deck and tested many hours with it since release. So I'll be going through the deck strategy, the ideal deck list, tech options, and finally the matchups. To start things off, let's take a look at the leader Boa Hancock. She's a blue leader with 5k power, 5 life, 7 warlords and Kuja Pirates trait. Her effect is during your turn once per turn. Each time a card is removed from the field by your effect, if you have 5 or less cards in hand, you get to draw 1 card. The condition might seem a little restrictive, but it's very easy to manage and play around this. This deck doesn't have a lot of bad matchup, going 50-50 across the board except for a couple of decks. The deck strategy is to out-tempo your opponent with removal cards, then getting back your resources when you do it, and at the same time establishing your characters on the board. In short, it is a tempo/mid-range deck with the ability to get resources after removing characters by effect. You typically want to go second, seeing you want to play your boss characters as soon as possible, but again it really depends on the matchup, which I will be going through later on in this video. In my opinion, this is the best deck list that I've seen and tried minus one change. The change would be to remove the 2 Weevil for the 2 Pudding instead. This deck list was the one that got into top 16 in the Hiroshima Championship event, and also something to take note is this deck is from the OPO8 format, and the difference between this and OPO7 list is just that 1 card Jozu which we got in OPO8. So I'll be talking about the replacement for Jozu after going through this deck list. So the deck is running the 7 Warlords package, and it should only be running this package. Anything else is considered meme. The key cards from the deck here will be your Jinbei, your 4-cost Pudding, and your Gravity Blade. These 3 cards usually helps to counter some of the more popular decks in the format, but we'll talk more about that later on in this video. Most of the cards here are quite self-explanatory, so I won't talk too much about them. The 2-cost Pudding, on top of being a 2k counter, it can also come in handy towards the later stage of the game when you need to draw 1 or find a bounce target for Jozu if you have nothing else on board. You can even combo her with 3-cost Doffy. After stacking your deck, you play this Pudding down and then bounce her back using her effect, and then you get to draw 1 card if you have 5 or less cards in hand. Something to take note about Jozu and Sengoku. Usually if I only have 1 Sengoku and Jozu in my hand, I will not play Sengoku down, turn 1 to search, if I know my opponent has easy removal, like for example if you are playing against Black or even RP Law. So instead I'll play my Sengoku alongside Jozu so I can use Sengoku as a bounce target. Another interesting to take note about Jozu is it allows you to recycle your cards. For example, if you've attacked or played your Jinbei, you can play Jozu down to bounce that Jinbei back to hand to replay it again. Jozu also combos with cards like Gecko Moria, allowing you to recur cards again or reuse your 4-cost Pudding. Initially I was running 4 copies of the Bounce Kaido, but after testing it, it is fine to play the draw 4 or even go for a 2-2 split. This Kaido is strong mainly because of it being 10 cost and have a high attack power. Aside getting hit by Red Rock, it will take a lot of resources for the opponent to get rid of him. Depending on the matchups, this Kaido will be either really good or useless, and again I'll share more in the matchup section later. For OPO7, since we don't have Jozu, I would instead use that slot to fill in a playset of Pudding and Red Rock. For tech options, some cards you can consider using are More Weevil, 3000 Worlds, Gum Gum Rain, and Perfume Femur, though I wouldn't really want to include them in the deck as this current deck list that you're looking at is already fine as it is. So now let's go through the matchups. There will be a lot of leaders that I'll be going through, and I'll be going through them by colors. So firstly we have Zoro. Against Zoro, you want to go first as much as possible. The matchup is 50-50. If your opponent is running Zoro, very likely that they are running the animal version from OPO8, but either way against Zoro, your key cards will be Hancock, Jozu, Gravity Blade, Jinbei, and to a certain extent your Crocodile to bounce your opponent 1-cost characters up. And the strategy is to get rid of their attackers and deplete them of their resources. For this game, you can forgo your 10-cost Kaido. It would be great if you can play him down, but it's not a priority. Next, we have everyone's favorite deck, RP Law. The matchup is again 50-50. And you want to go first. Key cards are quite similar to Zoro matchup, which is Gravity Blade and Jinbei. This is very effective against RP Law. You might want to always keep 1 or 2 Pudding in hand as well, just in case they draw a lot from Reiju. And usually for games against RP Law, the 10-cost Kaido can be really strong, but it's really slow to get it out because the game is too fast. So for this matchup, if you have the right time to drop it, it's really good. It will be tough for them to get rid of the Kaido, but at the same time, it is not your priority. Your priority here is definitely getting your Jinbei and Gravity Blade. Another thing to take note about this matchup is you don't want to play your Sengoku if you don't know what are your top 5 cards. Reason being is you don't want to send your Gravity Blades to the bottom of the deck, so it's best to use Sengoku after you've seen your top 5 with 3-cost Doffy. Although I said the matchup is 50-50, if you miss your Jinbei and Gravity Blade, the game will go south really quickly. Next, we have Bonnie. Against her, in my opinion, it's almost 60-40 to your favor. You want to go second, and the whole goal is to get your 10-cost Kaido out. Key cards are Pudding, Boa Hancock, Jozu, Kaido, and Gravity Blade. Against green decks in general, they will have a lot of hand cards in hand, which is why you have Pudding. They typically add cards using Bonnie or even Baby 5. So again, Pudding comes in really handy. And if you have Hancock, you can just bottom the 1-cost searches without attacking to them. Jozu is very good because it can bounce their Cavendish, Uruji, and other blockers as well. Gravity Blade is just a really good removal tool as you can get rid of your opponent's blockers. Finally, the 10-cost Kaido, especially the bounce one, is super effective when your opponent plays down 8-cost Kid. So you just bounce them, making them waste a turn and repeat if you have to. Next is Perona. I would say it's 50-50 and you want to go second. Most of your stuff are 4-cost, so it can easily be rested and then KO or attack into. Key cards here are Gravity Blade, Jozu, Hancock, and Kaido. The green stuff in Perona is not a problem for you, but cards like Gecko Moria and 8-cost Sabo could ruin your day. 10-cost Kaido is also good against them, so try to draw into your bounce Kaido as soon as possible. Next, we have the first unfavored matchup, which is against Green-Yellow Yamato. Here you want to go first, so you can be aggro against them. I would say the matchup is about 40-60 unfavorable, but still winnable and not an auto loss. The double attack plus Nami Banish is quite tough to handle at times, and if they are running the Egghead build, the matchup might be even more unfavorable for you. So the key cards for this matchup will be your Jinbei, 3-cost Doffy, Boa Hancock, and Gravity Blade. You want to stall out the game as usually they run out of resources by late game. Your 10-cost Kaido is not as useful here, but if you manage to keep your life at a healthy range when you drop 10-cost Kaido, chances are it will be really tough for them to remove it. Next will be the mirror match against Boa Hancock. You want to go second. The player who gets to Tendon first and tempo the opponent first win. So this matchup is 50-50 with emphasis on trying to draw Jinbei and Gravity Blade as much as possible. Next will be Blue Doffy. In my opinion, it's quite unfavorable because they can easily play 2 to 3 characters per turn using Leader's Effect and also Jinbei. So I think it is 40-60 unfavorable, but again it is winnable. You want to go first. Key cards will be your Gravity Blade, Pudding, Jozu, and Boa Hancock. Strategy is to clear your opponent's board and then drop down the 10-cost Kaido. For King, in my opinion, you should go first. You want to be aggressive against the deck because the deck typically packs a lot of counterless cards. The match I would say is 50-50, but similar to the Perona matchup, the purple cards are not the problem and can be easily dealt with. The problem comes with the black cards like Jack, Kaido, and Moria. So key cards for this matchup will be your Jinbei and Red Rock. And also you want to develop your board quickly and rush the opponent down. Next, we have another leader from OPO8, the Pudding matchup. I think it's 50-50 or could be even better. However, if Pudding goes first, chances are you might lose really quickly. The key cards here will be your Jinbei, Hancock, and Red Rock. Pudding faces the same problem as King, where they have a lot of cards with no counters. From my testing against Pudding, usually when I don't draw my Jinbei, I will just lose the game. And the whole point for playing Jinbei as soon as possible is to rush them down. Next, I will categorize these 2 decks together, which is Black, Moria, and Lucci, or just black decks in general. The matchup is 20-80. It's usually unwinnable. You cannot out-tempo them because they build their board even faster than you and their removal is much stronger than you as well. And yeah, you can't tempo them because they are constantly removing your board and at the same time generating resources through Gecko Moria. Blue decks are really weak against black and it's obviously your worst matchup. And we are almost down to the last few leaders. Next is Black Yellow Luffy. This matchup, you want to go second. I would say the matchup is either 60-40 or better in your favor. Your key cards here are your Pudding, Gravity Blade, and 10-cost Kaido. The strategy for this matchup is not to attack your opponent. Make them use their resources to get down to 0 life, and then you play down Pudding, shuffling their hand, dropping it down to 5. Then you want to bottom deck their 5-cost characters using Gravity Blade. Finally bounce your opponent's character or draw 4 with 10-cost Kaido. It will be very difficult for them to remove your Kaido and then you can just go for game from there. Next, we have yellow decks. We have Enel and Katakuri. The matchup, in my opinion, is 60-40. But if they are running the Egghead package, it might go down to 50-50. You always want to go second, and your key cards are your Pudding, 10-cost Kaido, and Red Rock. Yellow, especially Enel, likes to hog cards in their hand, so a well-timed pudding will most often win you the game. The 10 cost character Jozu and Hancock is really effective against this match because it's really tough to block against the attack. So against Kata, you want to rush them down by spamming your Jinbei and all these high attack characters, then eventually win the game from there. Finally, the last leader I have for today is Kalgara. The matchup is 50-50 and you want to go first. The key cards for this matchup is Gravity Blade and Pudding. I don't think you'll have time to play your 10 cost Kaido down, but if you do, it's gonna win you the game. The game is not a priority. Kagara tends to take a lot of hits, going down to 0, then using the leader's effect for free, and having a thick stack of cards in hand, similar to how the Whitebeard was playing back then. That is where your pudding comes in. Your Gravity Blade is really good to bottom deck their threats, especially Kalgara. Then other than these two main cards, you just want to rush down the opponent before they rush you, so they are better at spamming the bot than you. You'll probably lose if you can't control their bot or do any removals. So as of recording this video, Hancock has had 2 top 16s out of all the championship event and Grand Asia Open. So hopefully after they have addressed the RP Law and Gecko Moria issue, Boa Hancock could appear more in championship level events. So that's all for this video. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, drop a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think of the deck. Also follow me on Twitter or X for more One Piece TCG content, and as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.